What's up guys, Coach Az here. The jab is one of the most fundamentally important strikes in boxing, mostly because of its multiple usages and applications within the sport, whether it be as an attacking weapon, using it as a counter strike, or to set up your more powerful strikes as a follow-up. The jab is an essential weapon for anyone doing boxing, kickboxing, or Muay Thai. So I want to do a full breakdown for you today, and I'm going to break it down into 3 key areas of knowledge: the fundamentals, the variations, and the applications. So let's get it started. The jab, for anyone who doesn't know, is a lead hand strike that often goes to the head but can also be utilized to the body. The most important thing to understand with it is the economy of motion. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is there's no wasted movement. It's a straight line attack. It goes straight to the target and it comes straight back to the user, back to the guard where it originates from. The 3 common mistakes you'll see when people are throwing the jab is loading up. So that means that they're pulling back on their hand to then generate the strike. What this provides to your opponent is a tell. A tell is something prior to the strike that lets them know what you intend on throwing. So if I'm in my stance and I'm going to give you my jab with a tell, I'm going to pull it back to then shoot it out. And you're going to be able to read that small motion and then already begin reacting before I even get a chance to throw my strike at you. The second mistake you see is people dropping their hands after throwing the jab. They're shooting the jab out and then dropping the arm to bring it back to the guard. Remember, economy of motion. We go straight to the target and we come straight back. There's no deviating, okay? If I'm throwing it here, it's straight out and it's straight back. It doesn't go out here, drop, come round and come back up there. That extra split second it takes to come round, that's what's going to cost you and give your opponent an opportunity to strike. The third mistake that people make is not understanding the distance and not taking full advantage of their range. Your range is how far you can reach with your jab. We want to avoid what's called rabbit punching, which is only throwing the punch halfway, not getting that full extension on the arm and taking full advantage of the length of our arm and how far away we can be from our opponent when throwing the strike. We don't want to give our opponent any advantages that they didn't earn off of their own back. So if we're not fully extending our strikes, not only are we allowing them to get into range easier, but we're not fully utilizing and setting ourselves up to throw the technique with maximum efficiency and power. So guys, this first variation we're going to look at is called the speed jab. And the objective of the speed jab, as the name would suggest, is to throw it fast. And that speed doesn't just come from the speed of which your hand moves, but it comes from not having the tells and the other common mistakes that we mentioned at the start of the video. So really trying to have just very good economy of movement, direct punch straight to the target and straight back to the guard. Keeping the back arm up by the chin, of course, maintaining a nice balanced, even stance, shooting your jab straight out, nice long range punch, and pulling it back to the guard each time. And guys, if you're enjoying the video, please hit that like button. It really helps more people to see the content. Subscribe to the channel and let us know if there's anything else you'd like us to break down in detail like we're doing here with the jab. Alright, moving into our second variation, and this is the power jab. So people don't often think of the jab as being a powerful technique, but if you put your body weight behind it, it really can be. So here you can see I am stepping in with my feet, whether that be both feet or just the front foot stepping forward and in, and therefore putting my body weight in behind the jab. And you can see by the bag just how much power you can initiate in through that jab. Otherwise, I'm trying to maintain the jab technique as I would otherwise, straight out to the target, straight back to my guard. But I'm working primarily on putting my body weight in behind that jab through that step. Now, for the power jab, you're going to need a little bit more range because obviously that step in is going to close the distance. And I still want to take advantage of how long my arm is, so I'm going to give myself a little more space when executing the technique this way. This last variation is the probing jab, and here I'm using my jab less as a weapon and more as a tool. So I'm using it as a measuring stick, as a distraction to set up my more powerful strikes. So you can see here I'm primarily working it with a cross, but I will work some variations off that as well. And I'm just putting that jab out there. I'm touching my target. I'm using it as a range finder. I'm putting it in their eyes. I'm pulling their guard to one side so that I can create an opening and land with my rear arm or with my front arm hook, basically setting something up off of it. You can also see here I'm varying my distance, I'm changing my angles, stepping and moving. So I'm just probing with that jab to try and set up my bigger shots. Okay, this first application is probably the most common that you'll see, and this is the sliding double jab to get you into range. So the idea being here that I'm throwing the jab 2 times off of 2 movements to close the distance on my opponent. I'd rather go into battle with a sword than with a shield, running into my opponent behind a weapon rather than behind my defenses. So the idea here is that by throwing that jab out as I move, I'm already giving my opponent something to deal with, something they have to defend or manage or cope with whilst I'm closing the distance, rather than just trying to move in with my feet, and then I'm far more vulnerable to being hit upon my entry. So here I'm setting up different shots on the end of it, and I'm using that second jab as a marker. So when I find that second jab, I know I've found the range, and then I can follow up with a big, powerful follow-up strike. On this next one, I'm focusing on using the jab as a counter technique. Now, this is a bit more difficult to demonstrate on a freestanding bag. If you're going to practice this, I highly recommend using a hanging bag. Here, I'm pushing the bag so that it swings towards me. And as it swings towards me, I'm meeting it with that stiff counter jab. You'll often hear that term, a stiff jab. Really what that means is you're timing the jab just right, that as your arm fully extends and as you're at that point of impact with your opponent, they walk right onto the end of it. And it's like a rhino hitting a wall, yeah, the immovable object. So here I'm just trying to work on my timing. I'm also doing it in these variations with a little slide back where I'm creating the space to allow me to step in with the jab. The idea being if my opponent is pressuring forward, I create a little space and I put that jab in their face and give them something to think about. Now this last one, it's less of an application of the jab and more of an application of the guard, but I think it applies really well to the jab, and that's coming from a low guard position. So here I'm working the Philly shell, so think Floyd Mayweather, and the idea here is that my lead arm is coming from a low down position. Really, what I'm doing is I'm changing the angle of entry on the jab. So instead of it coming from a typical high guard and going straight to the target, it's coming up underneath the line of vision of my opponent. Okay, so this is another variation here from a Wonder Boy, karate, Stephen Thompson kind of guard. Same principle though, that lead arm is low and that jab comes from a different direction. You'll hear coaches telling you to keep your guard up all the time, but this is a place where you can make a bit of an exception. Just make sure that your head movement, your evasion, your distance management is on point before you attempt anything like this in your sparring. But remember guys, the most important thing you can do is practice, practice, practice. The more you drill it, the more you build in that muscle memory and develop that fast twitch muscle fiber in that hand, the better that jab is going to be. And it doesn't just need to be on the bag or in shadow, it needs to be put into your sparring. So you need to mix it in and start using it and getting used to understanding the range, the distance, and when and where to use all the different applications. Practice makes perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect an awful lot quicker. So guys, get out there, practice your jab. If there's anything you think I missed, drop it down in the comments below. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me to understand that I'm making good content and more videos coming soon. I'll see you on the next one.